Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first webinar of 2018 and the first webinar of the spring semester. We're so glad that everyone's here tonight. First and foremost, I want to extend a welcome to our semester one students. We're so excited that you're joining us for this journey.
Good evening, everyone.
You're going to be very hold on just a second. I'm having a technical difficulty. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I had the screen open and I was hearing myself talk in my ear, and I cannot concentrate when I do that. So anyway, we want to welcome you guys to the first webinar, and the semester one students. You guys are going to have a great journey with us. You're going to be challenged. You're going to be growing. It's going to be just a great time. You're going to be so blessed by this opportunity. My husband and I both went through the program, and it changed my life. It changed my perspective on a lot of things, and I can definitely say that I'm better because of my experience with Destiny Leadership Institute. I want to tell you guys to mark your calendars for June 5th, 6th, and 7th. I've already seen some talking on the chat that you guys are wanting to know the conference location, and we are going to be at Calvary Church in Fort Worth again this year. And so we want to just say a shout out to all of you students that are at Calvary, and thanks so much to Pastor Tommy and Denora for hosting us this year, but we're looking forward to it. That will also be a celebration of graduation, so you guys plan on attending. This is an amazing opportunity to connect with other leaders. If you're new to DLI, we have a chat box. You should be able to see if you're on your iPhone or your iPad or a tablet and you can't see the chat box, try rotating your screen. Look for a little tab at the bottom that says Load Chat Box, and you should be able to see the chat and participate. If you have any questions during the webinar, go ahead and submit those there, and I will get those to Landon. And then also, if you have any questions, go ahead and you can email me as well at stephanie@destinyleaders.com. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Landon, and you guys have a great webinar.
Well, hey, DLI students. So glad to see you all. You have joined us to kick off the spring 2018 semester. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for the introduction and for greeting us. For those of you who are just beginning DLI, you'll hear a lot from Stephanie Powers. She is the DLI Administrative Assistant. So she knows everything that I know and more. So if you have any questions, you can direct those to her. She's the one who keeps me straight and keeps me organized. So get to know Stephanie well. I'm so excited about this semester. Those of you who are just beginning and starting with us, if you haven't met me yet, my name is Landon Galloway. I have led DLI for the last going on 7 years now. As we'll talk about in just a moment, we've grown DLI from just a handful of students. Actually, Stephanie's husband, Roger, was one of our very first students, and I always joke with Roger that he took DLI before I had any idea of what I was doing, and so his experience was not at the same level as yours will be. So been going on for 7 years now, and excited about what God is doing. Every year, every semester really, I'm overwhelmed at the students that God entrusts us with. Every semester we work hard, we promote the program, we talk it up, and I'm always amazed at the people, the caliber of leaders that God sends in. I was reading your applications today, and Stephanie and I were actually discussing the incredible caliber of this class of incoming students, your educational background, how well you're already serving in your local churches. And so that we get to play a small role in your development and in your leadership training is very, very incredible to us. So as you probably know, our office is located in Heber Springs, Arkansas. However, we all work remote. Heber Springs is a beautiful place, and it's where Dr. Phil and Kathy Brasswood are located. If you, once again, if this is your first semester and you haven't met the Brasswoods yet, you are in for a treat. They are the most incredible people on the planet. So Dr. Brassfield and Kathy have started the ministry in Heber Springs, but the rest of us work wherever we are. Stephanie happens to be in Searcy, Arkansas, which is a metropolis about 45 minutes outside of Heber Springs. And I am currently located in Houston, Texas, where I also serve as the campus pastor of Grace Church Tomball. So we have a couple of Grace Tomball students that have joined us this spring. I'm excited to welcome them as well. So I'm wearing a couple of hats. I'm the director of DLI. I'm also the pastor of Grace Tomball. And why I think that's important is because one thing you're going to hear over and over and over and over again is the importance of pursuing academic studies while serving in the context of the local church. And so this isn't something that we just say to you that would theoretically be a good thing for you to do, but it's something that we all do. Stephanie and her husband Roger are very plugged into their church. Dr. Brassfield and Kathy, whenever they're not traveling, are very plugged into their church. And I'm leading DLI while pastoring a church as well, because we are adamant about this thing, that we are adamant about that biblical education, ministerial training should not be divorced from practical experience in the local church. That if you're getting an education, if you are acquiring knowledge, if you are learning the Bible better, whatever it might be, if you are doing those things, you should do those in conjunction with serving the local church, because the local church is the hope of the world. It is God's first plan. If our world will ever see any sort of systematic change for the better, it will be because of the local church. And if the local church thrives, it's because of people like you thriving to support and uplift the church. So I'm a big fan of the church, which means by default, now I'm a big fan of you. I'm a big fan of people who say, I care so much about building the church that I'm willing to pay a little money, to dedicate some time to learn how to serve it better. So I'm honored to take a small part in your development and in your training. And I hope that you become fans of the DLI program. I hope you become fans of Destiny. And because I'm just a little bit conceited, I would not mind if you became fans of me. However, I want you to know before all those things, I'm a big, big fan of you, because I'm a fan of the church. I'm a fan of what you are doing for the church. So the game plan, and one other thing I want to mention too, Stephanie mentioned the Gathering Conference in Fort Worth, Texas this June. I want to make sure everyone knows that is for all of our students. Once you have submitted the application for DLI, you are part of the Destiny family. So this is not just for students who are graduating. Those who are graduating, we're going to have a big graduation. It's going to be a great time. Invite your family, your friends, the people that didn't think you would succeed and you did it anyways, and you want them to see you walk across the stage. Invite them all. Invite everybody. It's going to be your night. However, even if you're not graduating, you are welcome. Come and enjoy the conference. It's a great time. Powerful preaching, incredible worship, and the relationships are second to none. You'll spend lots of time around a dinner table speaking with people who have similar backgrounds with you, that similar interest. And Destiny is known for our commitment to relationship. Other conferences may have higher profile speakers. I'm actually one of the speakers at our conference, so you'll definitely find higher profile speakers than me. But other conferences will have different, different speakers, different worship leaders. But what we focus on are making sure there are plenty of opportunities for you to connect to others, that we believe in connection. So clear your calendar for that date. Come to Fort Worth with us. It's going to be a great time. The game plan for this evening is I want to give you a brief word of encouragement as we kick off the semester. I want to just share something that's been on my heart the last few days that I think will help you. Then I'll give you a few tips on how you can be successful this semester. And after that, we'll take some questions. And if we don't take the whole hour, it'll be okay. Stephanie will just pray for the rest of the hour. And while you guys are tuned in and have a prayer meeting, and I'll have dinner. But anyways, I just want to take a few minutes to encourage you. And I want to do that by looking at Exodus chapter 23. I actually have a real Bible. If you guys have a real Bible, you can do that. If you have a technological Bible, that will function too. I'm reading from Exodus 23. I'm reading the English Standard Version. Those of you who are in the first semester will soon realize or soon learn why I prefer the ESV, the English Standard Version. Those of you who are in other semesters have probably seen that already, but the ESV to me is the closest to the original biblical languages, while at the same time remaining pretty readable. So I'm going to start reading in verse 20, and let's just dive in here. Exodus 23, verse 20. Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. Pay careful attention to him and obey his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him. But if you carefully obey his voice and do all that I say, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries. So let's pause here. The children of Israel have been delivered from slavery in Egypt, and perhaps you've been in church for a while, or perhaps you're new to this, but you'll soon learn, if you haven't discovered yet, that much of our preaching as a Christian church, much of our proclamation centers on the Exodus story. We love to talk about God delivering the children of Israel from Egypt, taking them across the Red Sea, and then the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness until through Joshua they accomplished their mission to take the promised land. And although most pastors are probably not aware of it, I still think the reason why that story has become so popular to us is that it really is a microcosm or a bigger or a small glimpse of the journey that all of us are on. We were in slavery to sin, to oppression, that we were slaves to our own lusts, to our own flesh, doing not what we wanted to do, but doing what our flesh demanded that we do, whether that was sexual or whether that was through gossip or through addiction to substances or through the pride that drove us to make bad decisions or the anger that led us to isolate others or whatever it might have been. There was a system in place that enslaved us to an old way of living. And then God delivered us from that, took us across the Red Sea, delivered us into the wilderness. And now you and I all have a promised land, a Canaan that we're trying to get to. And I believe that the Canaan is both now and not yet, that there is a perfect will of God for your life right now. And I believe it is 100% attainable in this life. Like, I believe that God has given you a dream, that God has given you a vision, that God has set you on a path, and that you will fulfill it in your life if you are faithful. I believe that with all my heart. And I also believe that there's an element of that is reserved for the next life, for whenever Jesus returns and heaven invades earth fully and eternally. That you and I will always, in some sense, be in the wilderness, be in the transition between the deliverance from sin and the security of the promised land. So I think that the Canaan is sort of this now but not yet figure that is visible in our lives. So I think the reason why we all preach about the promised land and retell this story over and over and over again is because it's a image, it's a symbol, it's a microcosm of everyone's existence. We were slaves to sin. We were slaves to the old world order. We've all had a miraculous conversion moment like the Red Sea, where we burst out of that, where we had freedom and walked in the newness of life, only to find ourselves now in some sort of in between where we were, our past, and where we're going, God's best future for us. There's a wilderness in between those two things, and a lot of our Christian life is walked out in that wilderness between the what was and what will be. The present is where we are, trying to go where God wants us to be, and grateful that God has brought us from where we were. I'm thankful that I'm not where I was. However, I do realize I have a lot of distance to cover before I am exactly where God wants me to be. I'm in the wilderness at this moment. So when we talk about the story, I want you to place yourself there, to place yourself in the wilderness, because you are not where God wants you to be just yet. But I'm confident that you can get there. So in the middle of this, that they're in the wilderness still, and God continually gives them reminders of the promise, because he knows, just like you know and I know, that when we are in the wilderness between where we were and where we're going, that it's easy to get disheartened, to say, okay, well, maybe God delivered me just to let me wander the rest of my life. Maybe God delivered me and I may never reach my potential or reach my fullest. However, God continually gives them reminders. You are going to take the promised land. And this is one of those passages where he begins to explain to them, you will take the promised land. And what I love here is he says, you're going to take the promised land because you are going to follow the angel of the Lord who goes before you. Now, this is important because the Egyptian army, the most powerful nation in the world at that moment, had been trying to conquer Canaan for years, using the strongest army, using the most sophisticated military technology at that time, using the largest military force known to man at that time, and they were unable to conquer this land. Yet God told this ragtag group of soldiers wandering through the wilderness who had no necessary military expertise or experience, you are going to take this land, you are going to conquer this, even though the armies of Egypt couldn't do it. I've called you to do it. And how would that happen if it was not for the angel of the Lord leading them and guiding them? Listen, you may feel like God has called you to do something very big. Maybe you feel like God has called you to do something at the cusp of impossible. Maybe you're feeling the call of God to plant a church or to step into a ministry director position. Maybe you're feeling God calling you to leave your employment to one day pursue full-time ministry. I don't know what he's calling you to do, but it may seem impossible. But let me tell you something. It is impossible if you do it, but it's not impossible if the angel of the Lord leads you to do it. What Egypt couldn't do on their own power, Israel is able to do on its limited power, not because of their abilities, but because they were following the angel of the Lord. And whatever God has called you to do, whatever he has promised you to do, even if you would never be able to do it in your own power, in your own might, if you're following God, if it's his angel who's going before you, if it's he who is leading you, you can do what seems to be impossible to everyone else. So that's what we just read in verse 20. God saying, you're going to take the land. I know you're in the wilderness. I know you're frustrated. I know that you're looking back at what I've done and you're looking ahead to what I will do. But right now you're like, God, what is happening right now? And maybe you've been there before. I know I have been like, God, thank you for what you've done. Thank you for what you're going to do. But right now sucks. Like, just pardon me. Like right now, like what's going on right now? The past was good. The future's good. But what is the right now? And so let's talk about that, God. Let's talk about what you're going to do right now. And so God says, look, I hear where you are, and trust me, you're going to follow my power. You're going to follow my presence. You're going to follow the angel into the promised land. And so then he goes on to tell them this in verse 23. When my angel goes before you and brings you to the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, I will blot them out. You shall not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do as they do, but you shall utterly overthrow them and break their pillars into pieces. You shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will take sickness away from among you. None shall miscarry or be barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of your days. I will send my terror before you and will throw into confusion all the people against whom you shall come. And I will make all your enemies turn their backs to you. And I will send the hornets before you which shall drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites before you. Wow. Praise God for that word. Come on, somebody. That what God's going to do is it's going to be amazing. He is going to go before you. He is going to destroy all the tribes, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, any other ites there might be. He's going to blot them out. Like they're going to be a thing of the past. That God himself is going to do it. The only thing he asks of you in return is to be sure not to worship any of their gods and to destroy them completely. If you're entering into leadership, or if you've been into leadership for a while, this is a timely word for you. The false gods of our world cannot be tolerated in any way, shape, or form. They must be destroyed. If you are a leader, there is no room for lust in your life. You can't just sort of put it on the back burner and try to hope it doesn't turn its head. You've got to kill that thing. If there's some pride in you, if there's some envy in you, if there's anger in you, you can't tolerate it at all. You can't say, well, that's just how I am. That's just how I'm wired. That God No, you've got to kill that thing. You see this whenever the children of Israel take Jericho. Achan is one who took some of the land or some of the possessions of Jericho that were meant to be destroyed and hid them in the camp. And because there were still possessions from Jericho in the camp, the judgment of God broke out against the children of Israel. One thing I've learned in leadership is that if you do not kill the sin in your life, it will eventually overtake you. There are countless stories of pastors and of leaders and of ministers and people serving in churches who never could overcome secret sins. They thought they had it managed. They thought they had it under control. They thought they had it like where it wasn't so bad, but it will destroy you. If you are a gossip, trust me, in leadership, your gossiping will destroy you. You can't tolerate it. It's going to destroy you. And so that's what God's saying. Whenever you encounter sin, when you encounter things that are anti-Christ, that are anti-God, there has to be no room for them. Otherwise, they will ultimately destroy you. So you better destroy them before they destroy you. All you have to do, he says, is wipe it out. Get rid of it. And if you do, I'm going to blot out the people. You tear down the altars, have nothing to do with it. Do not tolerate it at all. And it's going to be great. No one's going to miscarry. No one's going to get sick. Like this is like a Pentecostal prophet's dream come true. Yea, I say to you, no, everyone's going to be rich. No one's going to be sick. No one's going to miscarry. Nothing bad's ever going to happen. Your life's going to be sunshine and rainbows and butterflies until it's going to be just the best. It's going to be the most awesome thing ever. And if you're the children of Israel, you're going, yes, Lord, hallelujah. Yes, God. Yes, yes, yes. But then you keep reading. And then verse 23 says this, when my angel goes before you and brings you to the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites, the Hivites, I'm sorry, I repeated myself. Let's actually go to verse 29. So in 28, we're just told that he's going to send the hornets out, which is another really awesome thing. So just imagine God's like, I love you so much that I'm going to send a whole nest of hornets to destroy your enemies and make them go away. Those are some big hornets. But then he says, I will not drive them out from you before you in 1 year, lest the land becomes desolate and the wild beasts multiply against you. Little by little I will drive them out before you until you have increased and possessed the land. And I will set your border from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines and from the wilderness to the Euphrates, for I will give you the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall not drive them out before you. And you shall drive them out before you. You shall make no covenant with them and their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you. So, good news. I'm going to blot them out. You're going to be healthy. You're going to be there's going to be no miscarriages. There's going to be no sickness. Life is going to be great. I am personally, says God, I'm going to come down and blot out your enemies. I'm not going to just like mildly defeat them. I'm going to wipe them out. But here's the catch. I'm not going to do it in 1 year. And this is a hard thing for most people to learn, but I've found out that it's a very hard thing for people in leadership and desiring to enter to ministry to learn. That I've got a plan for you. It's going to be incredible. It's going to happen, but it's not going to happen in 1 year. See, you and I like to put things on neat timetables. So January 1st, 2018 hits. Well, okay, God, like, okay, I'm going to do, this year is going to be my best year ever. I'm going to drop 20 pounds. And I'm going to read 1 book every week. And I'm going to exercise every day. And by the end of the year, my life is going to be perfect because every imperfection I have right now, I'm going to address that. And by the end of the year, I'm going to be a different person. Well, as Dr. Phil McGraw says, how's that working for you? Because you made that resolution in 2016 and 2017 and 2018, and really you are the same you on December 31st as you were on January 1st, because there is no neat timetable for how God works in your life. There is no guarantee that you're going to be much further along in your spiritual walk in 12 months than you are right now. God does not work by our timetables. He says, look, I'm not going to do this in a year. I'm not going to do this in a few months. I'm not going to do this on your timetable. I'm going to do this in incremental fashion until you reach what you want, reach where I have you to go, because I see your future, and the only way to get there is little by little. And also, God says, there are wild beasts there. And so God often does this to us. He gives us a promise and makes us excited. And maybe you've been there before. And Stephanie's the only person I can see, so I'm hoping I can get some agreement, at least from her, that you feel called to ministry, you feel called to do something big. It's like God, and God gets you all excited about what it's going to look like. And then he says, oh, but it's going to take a very long time. And there are wild beasts there. So you know what that's like. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, and it's not easy. It's not as glamorous as it initially seems. I often laugh whenever I encounter young people who idealistically want to do what I do, and they want to pastor, they want to lead. And I'm like, if God's called you to do that, that's great. But if he's not called you to do that, there are much easier ways to make a living. Like, there's better ways to do this because it's not what it seems up front. It's a process that unfolds over time that requires great patience. And there are animals there. There are wild beasts that are standing between you and your destiny. There are obstacles that you will have to overcome to become all that God wants you to be. So here's what he says I'm going to do to you. I'm going to give it to you little by little. Here is the most encouraging and discouraging thing I can say to you that are aspiring to be leaders, that are working in leadership, that are seeking out God's best. Most encouraging and discouraging thing I can say to you is that your dream will happen little by little. It's discouraging because initially you think, man, I'm going to be an overnight sensation. Like, God's called me to do this, and I can't wait to see how big my church is going to be, or I can't wait to see how big that ministry is going to grow, or I can't. And it's discouraging that it doesn't happen overnight, that you don't walk into the promised land in a 48-hour period. But it's encouraging because we're often frustrated by our lack of progress. I know I am. Like, I'll raise my hand. Frustrated by the fact that I'm not much further from, like, I'm not moving at the rate that I think I should be moving. But God is saying here that he rarely moves us instantaneously. We don't wake up into our destinies. We slowly get there. I remember, and Stephanie probably can attest to this, whenever we started DLI, we had about, I think, 12 students the first semester. I had never led a program like this. I had no idea what I was doing. Our website was terrible. Our systems, our systems were terrible. All we knew is that God called us to do this, and I had no idea how to do it, and we just started. And so I remember at 12 students, I would think, man, I can't wait till it gets better. And DLI has consistently grown over the years. And if I'm not careful, I can say, man, I wish that DLI was bigger than it is right now. But when I look back at where God has brought us from, I realize He has been growing us little by little. We've not had a lot of years where we jumped from 12 students to 100. No, we went from 12 to 100 over several years of hard work, little by little by little. You are a product of us being faithful whenever God was just moving us ahead little by little by little. If you are leading a ministry, let me encourage you, believe God for the impossible. Believe God for the crazy. Believe God that He is going to double your attendance in 2018. But don't be disappointed whenever He grows your attendance by 10 or 15 or 20%, because often in ministry, often in life, it's just a slow process of going little by little. It's all about timing, all about timing. And here's why. Because I think I've hammered that point home, and I know I've been sort of repetitive, but you have to get this. You have to get this. That God is growing you little by little. If you're starting DLI, you have to get this, because right now you're excited. Right now you're can't wait to get into the classroom, take the first quiz, you're there. But pretty soon you're going to realize, okay, I take a quiz this week, and I take a quiz next week, and I read a book this week, and I read a book next week, and I submit a journal this week. You've got to realize you're making progress, even though you don't see it. It's just happening little by little, little by little. But why is it that way? Why is it that way? And the text tells us, he says, because you need to increase. Let's look here. It says, I will not drive them out from before you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the wild beasts multiply against you. Little by little will I drive them out before you until you have increased and possessed the land. Oh, I know it's just like me and there's no one to aid and end me, but I feel a little preach on that statement, because unless you increase, you will never be able to conquer the land that God's called you to conquer. And so I'll speak from personal experience that things that I'm doing now in ministry, if I would have done them 5 years ago when I thought that I was ready to do them, it would have been a nightmare. If I would have been pastoring a church 5 years ago, whenever I was young and confident, and 5 years ago, I knew everything there was to know about everything. If you ask me a question, I know how to do it. I know the best way to go. I know the best approach. I'm smarter. I work harder. I've got this. Well, that is a terrible recipe for a pastor. To think that you're smarter, capable, and work harder than everyone else. So if I would have been where I am today 5 years ago, it would have been a nightmare. So I've had to increase. Check this in Luke chapter 2, verse 52. We're actually told this, that Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. That even Jesus had a period in his life where he had to increase between his childhood and his public ministry. He had to have a season of increase. So what God is saying to the children of Israel, you don't have the land yet. You haven't experienced the fullness of God's promise yet, because you are not ready for it. You've got to grow little by little. You need to grow. You need to prepare. That whenever God delays you does not mean that he denies you. His delays are not his denials. Sometimes he is just wanting you to be prepared for what he has for you. That God moves you little by little because you need to increase. You need to grow. This is good news for you. You are enrolled in DLI, you are increasing right now in your wisdom. You're increasing in your knowledge. You're increasing in your ability to relate to leaders. You are increasing now, little by little. You're growing now in order to get to where God wants you to go. Here's the next thing he says that I think is important. So the first thing that you really have to get is that your growth is little by little. The very first thing you need to get is the only way that you get to the promised land is by following the angel of the Lord. That it's God who will deliver you to the impossible. The second thing you have to understand is that that growth happens little by little. And the third thing is that the reason why you grow little by little is because God is waiting on you to increase, on you to have the capacity to walk in the ministry that he's called you to walk into, that you are not ready yet for your future, that you need some more preparation, you need some more training, you need to read some more books, you need to listen to some more sermons, you need to spend some more time on your face in prayer, you need to spend some more time in the Word, you need to spend some more time submitted to leaders. You have to increase. And then he says this, and I will set your border from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the Euphrates. For I will give the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them out before you. He says, I will set your boundaries. I will set your borders. In your promised land, in the place you are going, God will establish your borders and your boundaries. If you don't hear anything else I say tonight, hear this. You were graced for a place. That God has set boundaries where you will flourish, and you will not flourish outside of those boundaries. Young, aspiring, enthusiastic leaders, so easy to want to do everything, but you will not be blessed doing everything. You'll be blessed whenever you are within the boundaries within which God called you. This may be surprising to you, but I can't preach like T.D. Jakes. And so if I decide to take that as my portion, to take that and I get up and scream and yell and dance and wave a hanky, I'm going to look ridiculous. And when he looks incredible, like that's his lane, he does that. Dr. Brassfield has a particular style of teaching and a way of conveying wisdom that I do my best to learn from, but I've learned that I can't be exactly him as much as I would like to be him because he's the wisest man that I know. I can't be that. My dad's a pastor, but I can't be him. I serve two incredible senior pastors here at Grace Church in Houston, Pastor Brett and Pastor Scott. And as much as I would like to imitate and emulate them, I can't quite be them. They all have something that I don't have, that God has given me a lane and has given me a boundary. This isn't in my notes, mostly because I don't really have notes, but still, like what DLI is, you got to think I was 23. No, I was 27 whenever I started leading DLI. Somewhere, I don't know how old I was, but I was young when I started leading DLI, okay? And at that time, there was nothing like DLI out there. That whenever Dr. Brassfield asked me to lead an online correspondence ministry training program, all my friends were becoming pastors. All of my friends were doing different types of ministry. They were serving in churches. They were planting churches. And I did this because this is my place. Being able to teach, being able to develop leaders, like this was my place. And even though no one else really understood this place, I'd go to pastors' conferences and they'd be like, so what do you do? And I try to explain like, okay, well, yeah, that's good, brother. Just keep it up, because they couldn't understand my place. But God put me in this boundary, and I thrive best in this boundary. And to this point in my life, I've seen many ministry dreams fulfilled just because I was willing to stay in my lane to do what wasn't popular. Like whenever other guys my age were focused on church growth and develop, and all that stuff's good and great. Like I was going to sit, I'm the only guy in my circle that I know of that has a master's degree because I want to stay in my lane. Like academic theology, academic biblical studies isn't everyone else's lane, and people don't always understand it, but it's my lane. And God has called me to this place. I'm going to prosper best in my boundary. So what is your boundary? If you are a youth minister, then don't use youth ministry as, and I'm just being all like, I don't know, prophetic or something right now, because it's like, but don't use youth ministry to like go to be a pastor. If God has called you to the lane of youth, that's where you're going to be blessed, is in that ministry. If you are a second chair leader called to assist and support your senior pastor or your main leader, then you are going to be blessed in that role. And you're not going to be blessed whenever you're trying to take over a leadership position that's beyond you. If you're called to kids ministry, you are going to be blessed in kids ministry, and you're going to be frustrated whenever you take on ministry responsibilities above and beyond that, because God has established boundaries around your promised land, and you are going to be most fulfilled whenever you're operating within the boundaries in which God has called you. You are not just graced for anything. You are graced for a specific place, and as long as you live within the boundaries, you'll find fruitfulness in ministry, you'll find longevity, you'll find strength, you'll find peace. But once you begin to get outside of those boundaries, you'll find nothing but frustration. I'll give you one last point before I move on. I want you to notice this very last line. He says, I will give the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them out. The last thing you need to know that the only way you'll accomplish what God has called you to accomplish, first of all, is to realize that it is God going before you who will empower you to do the impossible. Secondly, you need to know that this will happen little by little. Third, you need to realize that it's going to happen little by little because you need to increase, you need to grow, you need to get ready. And then whenever you do enter into your promised land, there is a certain boundary around it. And finally, you need to understand this tension, that God will hand it over to you and you will have to work for it. God says, I'm going to drive them out. I will hand them over, but you will drive them out. Sometimes we think that God is just going to hand us our destiny. God is just going to hand us our future. And yes, he does. But there's this tension. It's not just about what God can hand over to you. It's about your ability to also drive it out. There is this tension that God does the work and you do the work. That God does things that only God can do, and you do things that only you can do. It takes hard work. It takes diligence to get to where God is leading you. Hope that was encouraging to you. Something that's been on my heart lately that I think could be helpful as we begin this semester of DLI, to keep a big picture in mind. How do I want to say this? I'm aware that DLI becomes a series of assignments, of books, of quizzes, and I always want you to see the big picture. Like you're not just doing a quiz on the geography of the Old Testament. You are actively fighting for and working towards your destiny. So I always want to keep that in front of you. Let me give you a couple of tips for success this semester in DLI, and then I want to answer some questions for you. If you're a new student, I've sent out a tutorial to show you exactly how the classroom works. So hopefully you'll be able to access that and to figure that out. So we're not going to do a lot of practical, how to access the forums and how to find a quiz. And I'm hoping that you can access it that way. But anyways, here's some general things that will help you be successful. Don't just be a student in the program, but be a student of the program. You need to review all of your syllabi. You need to get to know the DLI team. You need to know what courses you're taking. So your experience is going to be much better if you don't just accept the role of student in the program, but also strive to be a student of the program. Like, how does it work? What classes do I take which semester? What does the syllabus say? be proactive to understand how things work. Who are my teachers? Who are my teaching assistants? Who do I need to contact for finances? I can help direct traffic. I have no problem of doing that at all. But you just need to basically know that that Stephanie handles most of the communications and technological issues, and really serves as an admin assistant. Almost anything you need to know, Stephanie can find the answer out for you. Amy is working in finance department. So if you email me and say, well, how much money do I owe this semester? I'm going to say, I have no idea. And I have no way of knowing. Like, that's an Amy question. So Amy's over finances. Stephanie is your admin assistant, just to help you with technological issues, any general questions you might have. And then every course has either an instructor, and I teach many of the courses, or a teaching assistant. And the teaching assistants are all DLI alumni who have graduated from the program. And so we're the ones that can help you with the curriculum itself. Here's something else I think you would benefit from. Spiritual authority does not only involve submitting to people, it involves submitting to processes. So if I'm a big believer in spiritual authority and submitting to my leaders. I'm submitted to Dr. Rassfield. I'm submitted to Pastors Brett and Pastor Scott. I'm submitted to the leaders in my life. And I hope that those who are serving in our church could submit to my leadership as well. I believe in submission. But, submission is not just to people, it's also to processes. If you have enrolled in DLI, paid your tuition, ordered your books, then just make up your mind that you are going to do what's asked of you to do. You may not like the forums. So what? Just do it. You may not understand the quizzes or why we put that assignment that way or why we asked you to read this book, but you have signed up for the program. I actually had a conversation with a student once who said, I don't know that God is telling me to read that book. And my response was, well, did God tell you to DLI? And he said, yes, God told me to do that. I said, well, God told you to DLI, and I lead DLI, and I'm telling you to read the book. So God is telling you, read the book. Like, that's just submit to the process. Even if you don't understand it, I've learned that there are many things in life and in ministry that I don't completely understand. But if God has called me to submit to it, I just do it. So submit to the process. The third thing is it sounds a little bit bolder now that I'm reading it again. But anyways, you always have time to do what you want to do. You always have time to do what you want to do. And it sounds harsh because there will be some of you who are saying, well, you don't know my schedule or you know how crazy my life is right now. But listen, I'm working 2 ministry jobs. I'm in a PhD program. I have 2 kids under 13 months. Sympathy for time is not going to be something that I have a lot of. Like, I know how crazy life can be, and we will work very hard with you. If you get behind, or if you get sick, or if life happens, we do our very best to work with you. But you just need to resolve from the beginning that the time issue can't be an excuse. But I promise you that at some point you will be crunched with your time. That at some point in this process, you're going to go, okay, how am I going to get it all done? And you just need to make up your mind right now that barring some crazy circumstance, you are going to make the time to do DLI. You have the time to do what you want to do. Finally, I would say the last point would be don't eat the elephant alone. And that expression comes from the old saying is, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. But even if you eat the elephant 1 bite at a time, it would probably rot and the flesh would get all nasty and stinky before you could finish the elephant, because an elephant takes a long time to eat if one person's eating it. So really the only way to eat an elephant is to invite the whole community to eat the elephant. And so I would just encourage you again to stay connected with your family, to keep serving in your church, to connect to the Destiny family, and to stay connected to people around you. Don't just keep your nose in a book and log into the classroom and all that. Just stay connected to other people. Teach other people what you are learning. Talk to your spouse about it. Talk to your small group about it. Try to connect with others about the things that you are learning. All right. That's all I really have. So I just gave you a brief devotional from Exodus chapter 23. I started in verse 20. I ended up in verse 33. So from 20 to 33 was the passage, if you want to go back and review that, and talk to you about how you can arrive at your destiny little by little, step by step. And then I gave you a few keys, what I found to be successful in DLI, some big picture ideas on how you'll have your best experience. And I'll be happy to field any questions that you might have. The first question that's came in, so this would be a great time for you to begin to send those in if you have any, would be about missiology classes, whether classes and missions will be offered in the future. As of now, there are no plans. There are no plans for that at this moment, but perhaps we'll reevaluate that in the future if there's enough interest there. Another thing I want to let you know about is that February 6th is our very next webinar. It's 2 weeks from tonight. It will be hosted live in Heber Springs, Arkansas. The entire Destiny board will be there. And so these are seasoned pastors and leaders who are doing incredible things. And these pastors and leaders will be sharing with us that night. So that night, I'm going to ask about 8 to 10 different pastors who are all incredibly successful where they are now. I'm going to ask them about the biggest mistake they've ever made in ministry and what they would have done differently if they would have known. So for a younger guy like me, that's an incredible opportunity to sit down with someone who's, pastoring thousands of people perhaps, and say, okay, what one thing did you do that you wish you would have done differently? So I encourage you to attend that. Invite your friends to attend that. It will be an open forum for everyone to watch as well. Students are required to watch, but other people are invited as well. Any other questions, Stephanie? Okay, we got some questions coming in. So there is no there is no app. However, like the webinars, we do have a Destiny app that can hyperlink you to the DLI webpage. But although our classroom is somewhat mobile friendly, like you can do anything you need to do on a mobile platform, but there's no specific app for the classroom. However, the webinars are all on YouTube. So if you have the YouTube app, you can download you download the YouTube app, search Destiny Leadership Institute, and my beautiful face will just pop up all over the place. So you can do it that way as well. And there's a link on the website that you can to find YouTube as well. So it is, but it is mobile friendly, and I do encourage students who maybe not, if you're not behind a laptop all the time or a computer, you can log on to the classroom, make a list of your assignments, and really do a lot either on your phone. You can download many of the podcasts that are available. You can download them into iTunes and listen to those podcasts as well. As far as any advanced classes being offered in the future, so advanced classes are classes that after you finish our 2-year program, you would go on to take. We do have a very exciting platform we're working on in 2018 that will be a hybrid, like an alumni program, where as alumni, we will get together and we will sponsor scholarships for emerging leaders across the world. We're working with a church in the Ukraine, perhaps to provide scholarships for those students of DLI. So any tuition you might pay for advanced classes would actually be scholarship money to help those other students do DLI. And in exchange, we would offer maybe some live seminars in either Heber Springs or Houston, and with an online component as well. So being developed. Stay tuned. You'll be hearing a lot more about that in the next couple of months. We're actually unfolding the future for how people who have finished the 2 years can stay connected, whether that be through advanced classes, through helping us sponsor foreign students who would otherwise have no access to biblical education, or just in general stay connected to the Destiny family for ministry opportunities and potentials for relationships. All right. Well, I think that was all the questions. So I hope that this has been helpful tonight. It's sort of unplugged. I'll give you a quick leadership lesson that would be good for you. So tonight's lesson, I taught this several years ago. It's been on my heart all week. I've just been thinking about it, and I knew that's what I wanted to share with you tonight, and I knew I had really good notes for it. I've had a busy day doing a lot of other things, helping get the classes up for you guys to run, and had some other meetings, and I just had a lot going on. So about 5 o'clock, I opened my computer to pull up my notes, and I could not find them anywhere. And so I've pretty much had to recreate that from scratch over the last, about 45 minutes before we came live here. So leadership lesson is to always prepare well ahead. I should have located the notes a few days ago whenever I decided to do this. And another one is to always keep your cool, because things aren't always going to go according to plan, and there's no choice but just to do it anyways. I couldn't have came on and said, well, look, guys, I had something prepared, but I don't anymore, so God bless you. I just had to pile through it. So maybe those are two things you can learn from my transparency about what happened tonight. And the technology is not perfect either, as Stephanie just pointed out. So that's a great thing that she noted, and I want us to keep in mind, is that sometimes you can be watching a webinar and it get kind of, pausing and all that, or you're trying to listen to a podcast and it doesn't deliver all the way, or you're taking a quiz and it times you out. It can be so frustrating. But just remember that only a few years ago you couldn't do this online. So it's worth the little bit of struggle. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off. Thank you guys so much for logging on. Please mark your calendars for the upcoming webinar, February 6th. It's going to be incredible. Get to work in your classrooms. As always, if you have any questions, please let us know. We're here for you. We're grateful for you. This is going to be an incredible semester, and I cannot wait to see how God moves in your lives little by little. You guys have a great night.